Welcome back to Comic Book History, episode 92. Yes, I'm going to do Bogus Street Master next. Don't worry about that. But I really wanted to do this one. So, what am I going to discuss here? Well, basically 11 years ago, yes, 11 years ago this happened, we had the crossover event Original Sin. An event that had all these revelations about all these characters throughout the Marvel Comic Universe. And here's the thing about these revelations. Some of these ones stuck. Some were, and a lot of these ones were just simply pointless. Like, did it add anything to the character at all, or the series? A lot of them, no. Basically, that was the big thing that launched the tie-ins for Original Sin. An event that was written by Jason Aaron, artwork by Mike Deodato, who Mike Deodato hasn't done really that much. If you think, like, has he done anything since the story wrapped up? Well, after Original Sin, well, he did work on Old Man Logan. He was an artist for New Avengers Volume 3, which I did enjoy those issues. He's done stuff. Jason Aaron himself would last in Marvel Comics for a bit longer. So, the Revelations. Now, this happened in issue number, I think it was 2, I think it was. So, one of the things I did enjoy about this book was, yeah, there was the murder mystery thing, like who will murder the Watcher, though he came back like 4 years later in the Pages of Fantastic Four during Dan Slott's run for the book. Yeah, brought him back. I mean, there was a lot of stuff set up afterwards, but not a lot of payoff, because here is the weird thing about this event. Because 1 month after this event concluded, after he spent all this time with this event, guess what happened next? Frickin' Access. Yes. Another event that had very little consequences afterwards. I mean, yeah, I'll talk about this one too. Basically, yeah. Original Sin and Access, like, basically After Effects 11 years later. So, basically, here's some stuff that stuck, and here's something that's been completely ignored. Okay, stuff that stuck. Let's start with Spider-Man. What was the relation about his tie-in? Well, this is something Slott did set up in the early issues of the relaunch after the Superior Spider-Man. Those remember that title, that basically had its 10th anniversary a couple years ago, and, well, Slott wrapped up that story, which I actually enjoyed his revisit to Superior Spider-Man, better than what he did originally with the book. So, there was this mysterious woman, and no one knew who she was. And it's like Slott set her up early on because he kind of knew this event was coming. So he used this event as an excuse to bring this character in, and just by sheer coincidence, the tie-in for this one ended his first story arc of the relaunch of Amazing Spider-Man. And who was this character? Cindy Moon, aka Silk. A character who is still very much around this very day, not doing very much, surprisingly. I mean, she did get an ongoing series after this. Yes, she had a volume that lasted for, believe it or not, 8 issues. One person claimed at the time there was actually 3, despite the fact there was 8. Got restarted. This by with book was by Robert Thompson, which I recently did basically review for my YouTube channel. So, and had basically had a 19-issue run, tied into Clone Conspiracy, wrapped up some stuff from other Spider-Man books, and she's had a few more volumes since then. She's been around the Marvel Comic Universe, still not doing very much, probably because basically her story is over, but I guess Marvel writers like the character so much, they keep her around. But here's the weird thing. Slott herself hasn't written her a lot of the time. It's like, right after the original Spider-Verse wrapped up, he didn't write her again until not Spider-Goddamn, because he didn't write that. Nope. Next time he would not write her again, I think he would not write her for quite some time. You're probably thinking, did he write her again during his Very lengthy run of Amazing Spider-Man. Not really, no. He would not write it again until End of the Spider-Verse. But what about other revelations about this thing that actually stuck? The only one I could think of, aside from that one, actually there have been a couple. One was around briefly and then basically forgotten because Marvel just didn't care. The one they didn't care about was the whole thing about Nick Fury being the man on the wall. And then him becoming the Watcher, well, basically the Unseen, at the end of Original Sin, that most of our writers pretty much ignored. Yes, it was occasionally referenced, but not exactly, for some weird reason. And I'm like, why the heck would you ignore this? I mean, the first person to reference this ending of this story was Jay Sayer himself in the Unseen Thor miniseries. He, of course, has popped up in books like Silver Surfer. I think he may have popped up in Nova briefly. But up until Dan Slott did his run for Fantastic Four, it's like the whole thing with Nick Fury Beyond the Moon, it's like it was just ignored by the... Oh, by the way, Wade also referenced it too during his Black Widow run, which I thought that was interesting. But yeah, the whole thing of him, like, okay, him being on the whole thing, that led to Winter Soldier taking over. He got a brief ongoing series, and then, like, his job was just dropped from storylines. It's like whatever basically was planned for the character to be the new Man on the Wall was completely dropped. Yeah, he got a brief ongoing series, Bucky Barnes with the Soldier, that lasted for 11 issues. And fun fact, it was written by the same guy who wrote the third and last volume for Secret Avengers, Alexis Knott. Yeah, as for the reason why it ended, some say it sucked. My problem with the book was basically the artwork. It was a mess. Though later on it did get fixed. And it was like, oh, we have where Bucky and Daisy basically were going to be a potential couple. Went nowhere. Crossbones in space. Somehow he got there. Never explained. There's basically King Loki from Jason Aaron's King Thor stuff. It was a confusing mess of a book. But you're probably thinking, aside from the whole thing of Cindy Moon, like, what is the one other thing that stuck afterwards? Well, aside from Nick Fury on the Moon, which most writers of my comics basically ignored, for seemingly, like, this is pointed out by a few comic reviewers on YouTube, where it's like, nobody was referencing this. It's like they just ignored it because they didn't care. That, or probably the editors, probably some people at DC Comics, Marvel Comics, like, oh, do not reference the whole thing with Nick Fury, despite the fact he's a very popular character. Well, not as big as some other characters, but he's a beloved character. Yes. So, the only major thing to stick out of this was Deadpool having a daughter, which at one point Gary Duncan tried to erase his memories, which he got back, no problem. But that's the only thing major stuck from Original Sin. Here's some other stuff that was revealed about basically the retcons. So, Luke Cage. Oh yeah, his dad was leader of Avengers team back in the 1970s. Despite the fact that he was also active in the 70s as a superhero, yeah, it was a bit confusing when it comes to that. Basically, a sliding time scale. But it did lead to a really cool storyline by Al Ewing that led to a relaunch of the title under the name of, well, basically it was the Mighty Avengers book by him, was the second line for the book. It was later relaunched as Captain America the Mighty Avengers, which first part of it was tied into Axis. I'll get back to that, don't worry. But here's some other revelations. Oh, there's some stuff going on with Daredevil's mom that was quickly resolved and never brought up again. It was like Wade basically was told to do this tie-in. Like, if you read the Daredevil tie-in, it felt like basically this was mandated on him. He had to do this. Like, for Slott, he prepared for the swing. Duggan, I'm sure because he was working with Jason Aaron, basically, that this actually happened. Okay, fine. There was also a thing related to Nova's Sam Alexander's father. I think his name was Sean Alexander, I believe his name was. Yeah. A storyline from his book that was seemingly resolved, and Sean Ryan basically ignored it. Like, the guy he found was actually his father's clone. Where apparently, like, the whole thing with Nova is that he had, like, something wrong with his father, then it was basically ignored. I'm not kidding about that. It was basically ignored. As for the reason for this, I don't know. Like, here's some other relations. Oh, Iron Man was involved with the creation of the Hulk. Revealed in the miniseries by Karen Gillan and Mark Waid. And right after this miniseries wrapped up, this was completely ignored. Oh, there was actually one other thing that actually stuck. Aside from Cindy Moon and Deadpool having a daughter. Thor having a hot sister, Angela. Yes. Yep, that stuck. She got a couple ongoing series after this, plus the miniseries Secret Wars. But at least that was another thing that stuck. Yeah. The 10th Realm thing wasn't really explored much after the whole miniseries wrapped up, but Angela being Thor's sister, yeah, that stuck. Of course, that was revealed in the Thor and Loki miniseries, which that was written by Jason Aaron and Al Ewing. Yep, Al Ewing wrote 2 tie-ins for this thing. Yep. You're probably thinking, did Captain America have a tie-in for this book? Like, Avengers basically was weird. Because the whole thing with Avengers, it's like, you're like, okay, so, alright. So, what was the Avengers tie-in? Well, it was a story arc that basically, it was like, oh, was some shocking revelation from the past of Captain America. Recent past, the whole thing with this one step time runs out in Secret Wars. Plus, it was time travel plot. Guardians of the Galaxy. What did this reveal? Well, it revealed exactly what happened with Richard Rider. And basically explained something fans have been asking Ben for 2 years at this point. At least he finally explained it. It was a good explanation, but some people might think, oh, did he kill them? No. It was just explaining stuff. Operation Sin. This was a really interesting miniseries. This is tying to Original Sin. This basically, the purpose of this miniseries was to basically make, it's like Marvel just adapted the MCU version of Peggy Carter and basically put that in the comics, and it's not been followed up at all. Not really. You're thinking, okay, what about Fantastic Four? Now, who was running Fantastic Four this period of time? Okay, since it was 2014, this was probably... Was it Slott? Was he writing the book this period of time? No, actually, it was Jason. It was James Robinson. You're like, what? James Robinson wrote Fantastic Four? Well, he did write in the 90s, so I would say it kind of made sense. Oh yeah, definitely. So, what was the revelation? Of course, it was something related to Johnny Storm. It didn't really go anywhere at all. Yeah, it's just something that Johnny Storm did to Ben that he was revealed, oh, he did it, and it went nowhere. No, seriously, it went frickin' nowhere. You're thinking, okay, there was the Uncanny X-Men tie-in. Yes. Which the whole thing with this one was really a past thing related to Charles Xavier, involving a mutant, the Matthew Mallory. Which the whole thing with this guy was that he was a mutant that Charles Xavier found. He was embarrassed by this guy, and that's it. So what's the thing? It basically the whole thing of like Human Torch return back normal. So Jameson, an article he wrote about praising Spider-Man. Yeah, it basically went nowhere. Yeah, nowhere. Oh, and Deadpool actually had another revelation. Scott Anderson revealed, oh yeah, Deadpool killed his parents. Did this go anywhere? Not really. So, Radiance, he was a character from All New. She was a character All New Inhumans, Invaders. Yeah, and get this, her father was a character called Golden Sun, a character who was referenced in Citizen the V Battalion. Her great-grandfather was involved with the original one, so her grandmother was actually a woman called Golden Woman. Yep. And she had a sister named Goldfire. Yep. So there was also a thing about, well, one thing that I actually did like about the miniseries original, introduced a brand new character who actually kind of stuck around, though he didn't do very much at all. Not really, no. It's like, yeah, it's like they introduced this guy in the original Sins. He got a brief ongoing, which I heard was canceled due to low sales, including part of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's basically a character brought in just to be a new Deathlock. And the guy was based upon the one from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. Black Knight, apparently that he has been deteriorating, and the whole thing with this time was to lead to his very brief ongoing series he would get the very next year. There was also a character named Gil Chismichael who had a secret about Doom that really didn't go anywhere at all. The character Lineage, who he's a character in Humans, it really... And there's also the thing with Howard the Duck. His tie-in part of it was just, oh, he became the smartest creature on this planet. Or large bone he buried. There was Lockjaw. Some of these are tie-ins. It's like, okay, for Nova, it's like, okay, supernovas were killers of other novas. Yeah, the supernovas. The otherwise known as the black novas. Oh, his name was Sam, J.C. Alexander. Yeah. You probably think, after all this time, do any of these things actually frickin' stick? Not really, no. Not really. It's like, a lot of these tie-ins, a lot of these revelations were completely pointless. Access had very low consequences afterwards. Like, here's the consequences. Okay, so the whole thing with Access was that, and it's like, okay, so it was built up in Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers book that led into this where, oh, Red Skull, the clone of Red Skull. It's the whole thing of him basically, get this, it was in the final issues leading up to this, that he built a concentration camp in Genosha and kidnapped mutants, and then Magneto pretty much killed the S-Men. Who are the S-Men, you might ask? A group of mutants basically formed by the clone of Johann Smith, which that's what they called him. He killed them all. One of them had been a daughter of frickin' Avalanche, though this was virtually ignored. Avalanche admits the fact he had a daughter. And and then he proceeded to kill Red Skull by crushing a boulder on his head. And then he becoming freaking Onslaught. And then this led to the first part of Access, where it's like, oh, in order to stop them, let's invert the Access. Of course, Magneto bring a group of villains, which include Amora the Enchantress, Loki, Carnage, yes, freaking Carnage, because basically this is like a weird lineup for an Avengers team, which is later dubbed the Astonishing Avengers. It's like, yeah, let's bring in these characters here. If I can find it here. Here we go. So it was Magneto, Mystique, Deadpool, Doctor Frickin' Doom, Sabretooth, Carnage, Amora the Enchantress, Loki, and a frickin' Jack-o'-lantern. Which one, you might ask? Why, the one basically Worker Crime asked, the one Rick Remender created. Yep. And, by the way, this character's dead. Yes, he got killed off in a one-shot that came out for Ed Bronson's run for Ghost Rider. No, Spirits of Ghost Rider, Mother of Demons. Yep, that's when they killed him off. Yeah, he is practically the only character that was a creation of... Well, yeah, it was the only one who's a creation of Rick Remender. Oh yeah, they also include Zorman too in here. Yeah, so they all became good guys. Deadpool became Zenpool, which they adapted this character for Deadpool Wolverine. Doctor became a good guy. And basically, in the story, he revived two characters in the story. He revived in the main story. He brought back Brother Voodoo, who died in Bendis' New Avengers book. And he's still around. He's actually at Strange Academy. And he brought back Cassie Lang. Yep. That was someone he killed in the events of the Jones Crusade book. Yep. Carnage briefly died, but he came back. Carnage was around for a while after this event wrapped up. He later got the guy who actually is Carnage, Cleus Cassidy. Oh, he's dead. Though for some reason, Torun Greylock briefly revived him for her brief run for Carnage, and then killed him off again. Yeah, it's weird. And by the way, he's only one of two people who actually is currently deceased. So, Absurdman, Manuel, he's basically sort of an anti-hero. And he actually is part of a group known as Gamma Flight. Yes, a group that's doing nothing nowadays. Yep. So, he was briefly inverted. By in case you're wondering, Titania is actually his wife. His very beautiful wife, mind you. I'm surprised no one has told him this. Like, dude, what a lucky man you are. Oh yeah, definitely. Yes. He didn't do a lot in the main story per se. Not really. Enchantress, well, I think she started a brief romance with Loki, but that went nowhere. So at the end of the event, 3 people kept inverted. Oh yeah, by the way, also Tony Stark became evil. Basically, the heroes became bad guys, and the villains became heroes. So, yeah, and then the version was reversed by the end of the miniseries, but then, for some weird reason, the way that thing was set up, and a lot of you pointed this out, though, at the time, randomly, Sabretooth and Havoc were standing next to Iron Man for some reason. Yeah, there was no explanation in story for this at all. Many people pointed this out, like, why in the world would these two be standing next to Iron Man? 2 characters from X-Men hanging out with Iron Man. So, Iron Man blocked the reinversion to start back normal, so he stayed evil, Havoc stayed evil, and Sabretooth stayed a good guy. Iron Man stayed evil very, very briefly, and then randomly after Secret Wars, he's a good guy again. Bendis was I'm sure he probably has been asked this a lot. How the heck did that inversion get reversed? After 10 years after this thing happened, after the supposedly was reversed off panel, it's like that was a question people asked, and a question that was ignored. It was never addressed in the Iron Man book. I would think at some point they would have addressed this, but nope. In the last 10 years, they've never addressed this at all. The other kind of loose follow-up you got to Superior Iron Man, which that was a really good tell by Tom Taylor. I'm sure Tom Taylor himself was asked about this a lot, was that it was briefly followed up with the time runs out. We have Iron Man wearing the suit, still kind of be a dick, so what's Steve Rogers do with the war's ending? Give me an armor so I can beat up Iron Man. In the case of Havoc, very little. Like, Inverted Havoc did virtually nothing after this. It's like he kind of showed up in X-Men. It's like he was teased, become part of Bendis' roster, but here's somebody weird coincidence. Bendis would leave the title not long after this. Yes, he would leave Uncanny X-Men. And what did Havoc do after this? Nothing. Absolutely nothing until he popped up in Colin Bunn's X-Men Blue, where the verge was finally reversed. Yes, it was reversed. It lasted for a few years and finally was fixed. And he didn't do a lot after that. You're thinking, okay, so he was kind of featured in some books afterwards. Like, I'm trying to remember, I think he was featured in like Matthew Rosberg's Candy X-Men. Before that he was in Astonishing X-Men by Matthew Rosenberg, and then Candy X-Men Matthew Rosenberg. And then when Krakoa started up, he didn't do much until he was put part of Hellions for some weird reason. Yeah, there was no real explanation. Oh, he committed some crime. What crime did he commit? They didn't really say. And then he just does some stuff with Madeline Pryor. Now he's back with Polaris, kind of. And he was recently seen in X Factor. Sabretooth. He managed to inverted the longest. Longer than Havoc. Like, he stayed inverted for 4 freaking years. Like, he joined Colin Bunn's Kenny X-Men right after. Well, first he was part of Rick Rider's Volume 2 for Kenny Avengers. Then he popped up in Kenny X-Men. And then after that wrapped up, I think then after that became part of Weapon X. Which, in that book became inverted again. I think after the book wrapped up, he got captured, put into the pit of Krakoa, had a couple miniseries, got killed in Wolverine, now he's back. I guess the reason why they decided to turn him back because it probably ran its course. But the one question that's been lingering since Access is what happened during the time skip for him? Because all people know was that he was kicked out of the Avengers Mansion for reasons. Did he get drunk and touch Rogue? No one knows. It was randomly mentioned in Gary Duncan's Deadpool. This happened right after the relaunch. Yeah. Don't have an explanation for that. Access didn't have many consequences after this. Well, there was a brief thing in the book where, Hulk became Rogue, but at least basically Bendis had respect for Gary Duggan's run for... Not Bendis, it was Rick Remender. Rick Remender had respect for what Gary Duggan was doing. Not the case next year with Bendis and Greg Pak, where he basically retconned something Pak established in his book for no reason, just to kill off the Hulk. So, Original Sin did have some consequences afterwards, but not Access. Well, kind of. Just for people say inverted. But what happened to You might think, okay, so what happened to Red Skull after that event wrapped up? Well, he did nothing. It's like this was a plot thread that was ignored for a while, and then randomly Nick Spence picked this up, and then he killed him off. And then also currently the original Red Skull is back somehow. Yeah, this is something that was just ignored because Rick Remender left the company. Yep. But, yeah, that's... Some of you probably thinking, why did I pick randomly take about consequences for two storylines that happened 11 years ago? Simply put, I actually like these stories. I enjoyed Access. Access is not a terrible story. Some people say it is, but if you actually sat down and read the story, it's actually quite interesting. And here's something you might find interesting about this book. That's a weird fun fact about this book. This was the second to last crossover that Spider-Man had a role in for several years. Of course, yes, he had a role in Secret Wars, obviously. But after Secret Wars, he did practically jack fucking squat. It's like Slott basically told the writers of these crossovers, hey, you're not using Spider-Man in your stories. At all. My Spider-Man. On Civil War 2. Not fucking Secret Empire. You're probably thinking, like, was there an event that basically where Spider-Man was featured heavily in the main story of a crossover? Since Secret Wars? Well, let me answer that for you. So, of course, Spider-Verse, obviously. So, after Secret Wars, of course, it was Civil War 2. Did he take part in this story? Nope. He did play a role in Monsters Unleashed. Wasn't a big crossover, but hey, he did play a role in the story. Oh yeah, he did. He certainly did. He played a very big role, leading the Avengers against some... It was a mini event, but I'm kind of counting it. But you probably think, like, was there any actual main story to actually part of that wasn't a Spider event? Well, here's the thing. In a big story, after Secret Wars, the next time to take part of a major storyline would not actually not be until War of the Realms in 2019. You're probably thinking, did he have a role in Infinity Wars? Not really. Infinity Countdown? Nope. So it took Marvel Comics. I think at the time when War Realms happened, I believe Nick Spencer was right at that point. Yes. So it took Marvel Comics 4 years to allow Spider-Man involved in the main story, and of course developed Absolute Carnage. Was he involved in Empire? In the main story? Not really. So after Absolute Carnage, he did play a role in King in Black. He did. Did he play a role in Devil's Reign? Oh, heck yes. Judgment Day. Not really. Okay. Blood Hunt. Nope. Venom War. Yes. Yes, he did. The current crossover, One World Under Doom. He's not really playing a big role at all. His role is very small, tiny at best. Yeah. Yeah. It's like Marvel just doesn't care to use Peter Parker in these stories for reasons. But I should end it right here. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Next up, Bogus Fruit Master. Okay?